Wrestlebuddy podcast, all about wrestling. Subscribe and follow for more content.
Hello everybody, I'm Griffin K from Wrestlebuddy.com, and today I'm joined with yet another interviewee. And on today's interview, we have somebody you may know from his work in wrestling journalism from pretty much anywhere. And he is Louis Dangoor. Hello, Louis.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm
summer in the UK, which is not very summery at the moment anyway. But no, I'm enjoying myself, enjoying what's been a few good weeks of wrestling with fans coming back. So yeah, nothing to complain about my end.
Absolute, yep. Great times at the minute. So I guess we should ask just general questions. Let's get to know you in case the fans who are watching this do not know much about you. So just give us some where you work, name, etc. All that.
So yeah, I used to work at Wrestle Talk, which is where a lot of people know me from. I'm now at Give Me Sport, covering WWE, AEW, all things wrestling really. I'm just graduated university about a month ago now really, doing political science at Birmingham University. So coming into my first sort of few months of freedom from education and straight into work. But no, I've been, I'd say, I hate saying well known, but most if people do know me, they probably know me from Give Me Sport, or more likely my work at Wrestle Talk, where I was at from January 2019 to summer of 2021, so quite a while.
So I guess it's a common question, but who's your favourite wrestler and your favourite match?
Oh, I don't know my favourite wrestler. My favourite match is Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle had an Iron Man match on SmackDown, which is very good, and it's not spoken about enough, so I'll go for that.
Very good choice.
My favourite wrestler, I think Brock, I know he hasn't wrestled in a while, but Brock would be up there. So would actually Roman Reigns right now. Roman Reigns. I'm really enjoying what he's doing, so I'd go for Roman Reigns, yeah.
I'm going to get absolutely obliterated with that opinion in the comments, I'm sure. So let's talk about your modern work.
Well.
Just broken the story a few hours ago about Adam Cole's potential signing to AEW. Big news. Took me by shock myself. Of course, your upcoming interviews with Jinder Mahal. You've done recently Big E, Drew McIntyre. Just speak a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah, so I didn't actually break the Adam Cole news. That was like me not corroborating, but just like aggregating a story from someone else. That came from Dave Meltzer. I know Sean or Sapp has spoken a lot about that. But yeah, I mainly do the interview side of things now. So I spoke to Big E, was my most recent interview that's gone up on the wrestling WWE Give Me Sport YouTube channel. I've spoken to Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal. Should be up fairly soon. That is Give Me WWE on YouTube to find those. So yeah, I've had a few WWE interviews. Hopefully we'll have a few AEW interviews in the lead up to All Out. I've had Cesaro and Johnny Gargano recently, Flash Morgan Webster. So yeah, a few good WWE names, which should make for some interesting viewing anyway. I really enjoy chatting to these people. It's a lot of fun. And hopefully there'll be a few more coming up towards SummerSlam really, which is shaping up to be quite a good show.
So you've spoken about Give Me Sport there, which you are now working for, but a lot of the people are asking the adaptation from Wrestle Talk to a lead role more now in terms of Give Me Sport. Just explain how those two things differ.
Yeah, so at Wrestle Talk, it was very different role to the one I've got now. I was kind of just really an aggregator, just kind of getting news and churning news out. Whereas to Give Me Sport, yeah, I'm in a lead role now, so I'm kind of having a bit more creative freedom over my content. Not that I didn't have that over Wrestle, but it was just kind of the different side, different things work from different sides. So I've kind of got more autonomy over the content I'm doing the interviews and kind of shaping them in a way that isn't just news. It's kind of working features into that, and kind of managing a team as well to kind of shape what Give Me Sport is and the kind of the way I want Give Me Sport WWE content to be. Obviously juggling relationships with WWE, AEW, and in that vein, trying to sort of content that's great for everyone, kind of juggle the responsibility of like, right, so when I'm interviewing a WWE guy, what did WWE want out of this? What does the wrestler want out of it? What do I want out of it? To kind of juggle those, which has been, I guess, what some people would call a pretty big challenge, but I've kind of relished and enjoyed. So, I mean, in terms of differences, at the end of the day, it's just covering wrestling news. Like, there are differences, but the bread and butter is very much the same sort of thing.
Yeah, so you work with Wrestle Talk. What have you really learned in that role, maybe your most early significant role in wrestling journalism? What do you think, what can you take away that you can tell us about that?
What would be like the one or two big takeaways? I'd say like the biggest thing I learned was, because Wrestle Talk is quite a big platform in itself, in terms of the YouTube side of things, it's just like, you've just got to do what you've got to do and kind of ignore the comments, because people are going to have an opinion about you regardless. So many people, so many different opinions. It's sometimes you lose sight of what you're doing, and sometimes good work doesn't go appreciated, and people just don't understand what is needed to go into that kind of good work. So I guess one of the big things I learned was just keep doing what you're doing and try and ignore any naysayers, but also appreciate those that are supportive generally of the work you do, which I think is very important.
Some sound advice there. A lot of people want to know what your favourite interview so far that you've done. If you had to pin it down to just one.
Ooh. I'd say Brody Lee, which is always like, I said that before he passed away. It was always Brody Lee. Like, I very much enjoyed the interview with him, and I think I'd still say that for me. Like, it was still such a great interview to get the opportunity to speak to Brody. He's a great guy. He's honestly a great guy. Tremendous interview with him. Getting to speak to him about his family, what the work he was doing with AEW, his work with WWE. It was an absolute honor to get to speak to him and pick his brain for a little bit of time, and him to give me like a portion of his time, and he was so generous with that. So I'll forever be indebted to him. And I've always said, like, a good interview is like a chat with a friend, and with Brody it felt like that, and he made me feel that way. So I'll forever be kind of appreciative of him for that.
Perhaps one of the bigger names you've interviewed is, of course, Ric Flair. Well, people just asking, generally, tell us about that.
Yeah, it was crazy. I won't go into how it sort of happened, because sometimes you've got to keep those things kind of private. But he had something to promote, so we spoke about that. He gave me like 45 minutes of his time. He was so generous. Originally, we had 20, and he just kept going, which was great. He was just so easy to talk to. I didn't realize how big it was until, like, it was my mum's birthday that I interviewed him, and we were supposed to go out for lunch. But when like someone like Ric Flair says, "Oh, I've got this time, can you do it?" You don't really say no. So I kind of said to my mum, "Oh, mum, I've got this interview. Can we change our plans?" And it was when I told her who I was interviewing, and she knew who he was, and she knows like Rock, John Cena, and Ric Flair, maybe Hulk Hogan as well. It was the fact she knew who he was. She was like, "Oh, that's a big deal." And same with my friends. Like, they're interested in what I do, but none of my friends are really wrestling fans, or not really. None of my friends are wrestling fans at all. So I haven't ever had the like, "Oh, this is what," like, they don't really ask. But when they did, and they were like, "Oh, you interviewed Ric Flair," I was like, yeah, I interviewed Ric Flair. Like, okay, that's cool, because they knew who he was. They knew he must have been a big deal. So yeah, to get to speak to him was absolutely crazy. A great guy who I'm sure will be great in whatever he does in the future.
I imagine Ric Flair, was he somebody you had to crank on Vince, or was he just amped up to go for the interview?
He's a showman. He loves it. He's an absolute showman. He's a true gent, and Ric Flair is not someone you have to sort of psych up at all. He loves the camera. He loves talking to people. I'm sure in his downtime he might not, but once that camera starts rolling, Ric Flair's an absolute professional.
So we've asked about your favourite interview, and I've seen something Sean Sapp put onto it saying he had an interview so bad that he probably can't even post it. So I guess the question is the worst interview. Have there been any that you haven't put up for some reason or another?
Yes. I've got to be kind of careful with what I say here, because
I was thinking that.
I won't say who, but I had an interview with someone that did go up, where initially I really didn't like it. I thought it was wooden, it was robotic, it felt very much like an interrogation. Both, I think, from my side and from his side, he kind of wasn't giving me much to work with. We just weren't. Like, at the end of the day, there are some conversations you have in life that are just awkward conversations. There are some people you just don't mesh with, and me and this person just didn't mesh together. So I'm sure he was sat there thinking, "Why is this guy asking me all these questions?" I was sat there like, "Come on, mate, give me." Got quite a lot of good stuff out of it in terms of articles and things like that. There's been one that hasn't seen the light of day because it just wasn't good. There was technical problems, and when I went back to listen to it, there were a couple of things where I was like, don't know about that. But then you feel guilty because you're like, this person has given up their time, and I'm not going to give them the exposure that they kind of wanted. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, for obvious reasons, I won't be saying who. Unfortunately, I'm sure people wanted the gossip, but I couldn't give that away.
That could have been our clickbaity title.
I know.
So, who's the interview that, if you had the chance to, that you would most want to do now?
That's a good question. I think Daniel Bryan, because especially with this potential AEW move, I think he'd be really interesting to speak to about that, his journey, the concussions and everything. He'd be up there. Everyone says Vince, but like it's never going to happen. So whereas Daniel Bryan is a pretty good possibility. One day I'll speak to him. Who else would I like? Cody as well, and Tony Khan. I'd love to pick their brains and just sort of speak to them about AEW as a whole. I think they'd be really interesting guys to talk to. So I'd say those three, but yeah, Daniel Bryan at the top of my list.
I'm still glad you didn't say you're worse interviewer than me right now.
No, I've enjoyed this interview. I've enjoyed it so far. It's been good fun. It's nice being on the other side of it for once.
It's not very promising. It's been great so far. It all goes downhill from here.
I can't say what's going to happen in the future. As you say, could go downhill. Could be one of the ones. Who knows? I'm sure.
So on Twitter, somebody's asked me about your greatest piece of wrestling merchandise.
I don't really keep wrestling merchandise.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
I mean, like plain walls. I've got a couple of. I'll show you that. I've got a couple of football and rugby shirts on the wall. Yeah, wrestling merchandise. I've never really had anything, to be honest. I've got some like shirts that have come. Like I got Brody Lee's shirt when he passed away. I got a Edge shirt and a Finn Balor shirt that I picked up at shows, but like nothing like a title belt or anything like that. I just haven't really got any. I know it's a pretty boring answer, but I've never been one of those like collectibles kind of guy. Like never had any of those like Funko Pops or figures. I've never been that kind of guy to collect those kind of things. So no, a bit of a boring answer for that one, but unfortunately, no, I haven't had anything.
So you're not a collector of kind of championship belts, action figures, or that kind of wrestling?
I mean, the championship belts are expensive, I'll tell you that. So I don't know if I'd collect them. And as I said, like none of my friends are wrestling fans. So I wouldn't say I was like a closeted wrestling fan, but I'm sure you know as well, like some people just don't think it's very cool. So growing up in school wasn't something I was like, oh yeah, like showed off. Oh, I'm a wrestling fan. I'm a wrestling fan. Like people who watch this in the US might not get that because they're just like, oh, it's pretty common. But not for here, like really isn't common at all. I was the only one in my year group, as far as I know, anyway.
Yeah, I also live in
followed
UK.
wrestling. Yeah,
so
I could tell by the accent.
Thank you. I live in London, so yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll talk off. We won't reveal where in London on.
Yeah, I don't get doxed by the viewers of this.
I mean, I'm also in London. If that makes any, if that changes anything.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The culture of wrestling in the UK is very different, I'd say, from America. There's a smaller, obviously, audience in Britain, one who sort of care less about wrestling. Even the barber today I was with, surprised that about the wrestling knowledge I had, and I was quite surprised about him myself. So, next question is: as someone who's been closest to the story between Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, and AEW, I guess we should ask your thoughts and if you think it's going to happen or not.
I think it will happen both. They've been teased too much, especially Punk. It's going to happen. Am I shocked? Yes, both. I thought Punk was done, and I thought Bryan would stay with WWE. It's been absolutely crazy, to be honest, these last 2 weeks of wrestling news. I think Punk could be a game changer for AEW. Bryan less so. Bryan's a huge name, but Punk is Punk now. People stop watching because Punk quit. So I think Punk could be huge. I think this could be tide shifting for AEW, if I'm being honest. So I think we could be set for a very, very interesting few months for wrestling as a whole.
Plus, of course, CM Punk has links in, of course, MMA and film. So I guess, I don't hold your breath, but I think that with all the teasing, it's surely going to happen at some point.
At this point, listen, AEW have had a rough go of things before, where people have turned on shows because Punk hasn't been there, but they've never said Punk's going to be there or never teased it. Now they're overtly teasing that Punk's going to be there. They're playing into the rumors. The Best in the World show in Chicago. At this point, I think you could say they are not false advertising because they're not advertising anything, but they are setting expectations that they know will only be met if Punk debuts. So I think for a company that does business the right way and is very smart in how they do business, I do think Punk will come in 100%. I don't think he can't, unless something changes, but I think the AEW's mindset as of right now is CM Punk will be coming in.
Yeah, I agree. I think they can't advertise this anymore without delivering. Otherwise, it'll be...
In as many
trolling.
words, they've said Punk's coming in. Tony Khan in interview those expectations. In as many words, Tony Khan, in my opinion, said CM Punk is coming into AEW. So I think that now, as you say, they've kind of got to do it. It's been not shut down and teased enough that I think it would happen. It's like football, for example. If you're a manager of a team and I ask you, is your team signing Mbappe? If you know your team's not signing Mbappe, you say we're not signing Mbappe. You don't be like, I can't comment on that. You kind of just say it's not going to happen because you don't want to set those expectations. So yeah, for me, I think AEW, I think both will be coming in, but specifically Punk, I'm the most certain.
Yeah, you've got to read through the lines in these sort of situations. It's not been stated, but it's been subtly sprinkled into their programming. So I guess now is a question about one of the big releases this year. Came on his own, of course, Bray Wyatt. And what do you think his whereabouts will be in the future?
It's difficult because I think Bray could be a guy that doesn't even need wrestling, could go into Hollywood, could go into acting. I also think Bray's a guy that could go to Impact and have so much fun there. The Fiend character wouldn't work in AEW for me. It's a very reality-based promotion, and I don't think it'd mesh well. I think that Aleister Black or Malachi Black struck a very good chord with that. And I don't know about the Fiend. Cult leader Bray Wyatt, sure, that could work. You sort of remove some of the hokiness and the sort of spooky nonsense, and you sort of just do, right, we're just a cult leader. I think that could work. But for me, I think he lands in AEW because of how big of a moneymaker he was for WWE. I think that Tony Khan will look at that and go make money for us. But I also, that's if he wants to go into wrestling. I could very much see a situation similar to Braun Strowman, who I know now has bookings. But initially when he was released, I said, yeah, I think he's going to return to WWE in a few years and he's just going to do strongman stuff. Well, sorry, I could see him not doing wrestling, but I could also see him in an Impact or an AEW or something like that.
You mentioned Strowman there, and to move from Bray to Strowman, of course, we've seen reports that he perhaps might be returning to WWE. What's your thoughts on that? Is it realistic, and do you think that will benefit his career as a whole?
Yeah, I think he's a WWE guy. I was shocked when he was released because he's such a WWE person. I think he works well there. So yeah, for me, I think if the money's right for him, which obviously with budget cuts it might not be, but I could very much foresee a world where Braun Strowman returns for sure, for absolute certainty. I think he's a great fit for WWE. He's a WWE superstar. He feels like a superstar. So yeah, for me, Braun would be a dead cert to come back, to be honest.
Do you think he would work better somewhere else where his creativity is less stifled and he can get more organically over, such as his we ran a few years ago?
The issue is he's not an AEW guy, is he?
No.
I don't sit there and be like, I want to see him wrestle Kenny Omega like I do with Daniel Bryan or CM Punk or even Bray Wyatt. there are no real dream matches for me with Braun, which is kind of the AEW shtick. So I think he's more suited to WWE, to be honest. And I think there are some guys that just are, and Braun is one of them. I think he's suited to WWE. So I would like personally to see him return if obviously the deal works out for him.
Sticking on that, Louis, of course, the releases annually this year, more and more releases. Do you think that's a common habit that will continue on for many, many years? Or do you think it's mostly in a pandemic era where
it can't go on for much longer because of they just won't have anyone to fire come a point. It's business at the end of the day. It sucks. It absolutely sucks because it does suck, but it is, and unfortunately, it is a part of life, a part of business where these things happen. Yes, you don't want to lose your job in the middle of a pandemic, but WWE superstars were not the only ones to lose their jobs in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, WWE did make record profits that year, but what people sometimes I think fail to understand is it's a cutthroat world, and businesses like WWE, and not exclusively WWE, all businesses want to make as much money as physically possible. So if they see some people as expendable, they see them as expendable and they let them go. It is a fact, a very harsh fact, but a fact of life. So for me, it's obviously sucks, and there are some incredibly talented people, some who I have close relationships with, some who I have never had the pleasure of speaking to, who have lost jobs, but the majority are out there doing absolutely amazing work in wrestling, or have just opted to not do anything within wrestling, and that's 100% their prerogative. So I think in terms of wrestling, never been a better time to be released, if that makes sense, because of given how many options and viable options there are there now.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I hope we can see you interview some of those people in the future. Now, moving on to quite a different note, talking about the AEW Impact relationship. So far been controversial in terms of the way that the brands have crossed over. How long do you foresee this relationship between the two companies taking place?
I don't know. I think maybe. I really don't know, man. It's so difficult because I didn't see it coming, and I think with COVID, it could only maybe enhance. But I think what you're going to see now is the New Japan and AEW relationship. I think that's going to be where the money is, and I think that's going to be where the future goes. Because with AEW, with Impact now, what other dream matches really are there? Like, Good Brothers and Young Bucks is it for me right now. Motor City Machine Guns once, I'm like, I need to see that. Whereas with New Japan, there's a lot. So I think that's where the relationship will go. And sort of this Impact one, which is linked, but will take a little bit of a back burner sort of seat right now.
In that case, what are your most anticipated dream matches for a potential AEW New Japan crossover?
Oh, number one on my list is if he comes in, Zack Sabre Jr. and Daniel Bryan. Like, that's number one without fail. That's my wrestling. Kosha Bushi and Kenny Omega, obviously.
Yeah.
And then like Minoru Suzuki and someone that you could beat the crap out of. Like Eddie Kingston would be pretty good. Moxley again. I think there are a lot of viable options. Even Kenny, I'd like to see that. I think there are a lot of options to make this kind of New Japan thing. So I think Kenny Omega and Jay White, which it looks like we could be getting on Impact. There's a lot to be excited about with AEW and Impact right now, which is just, it's so exciting. It's so exciting for the future.
Yeah, and out of those superstars, if you could interview, of course, any of those stars, who would it be? Obviously, of course, there is the language barrier to overcome.
Yeah, I've done a couple of New Japan interviews before, but again, with the English-speaking talent. I think Hiroshi Tanahashi would be up there because you'd want to kind of dive into everything. Tama Tonga seems like a great guy to interview, seems very entertaining. Zack Sabre Jr. seems like he'd be a lot of fun. I've interviewed Will Ospreay before. He's a great guy. I'd say, but I think it's got to be Okada, he's just Okada. So I think I would interview Okada. I'd like to anyway. Hopefully, one day.
Yeah, that'd be a great one to see. So my next question is, for anybody trying to break into the business of journalism that you two are currently in, and one of the biggest faces, I'd say, what would be your advice to those new people trying to break through in this?
Then I'd Wrestle Talk and said, hey, listen to your podcasts. Got any free work? They said, yeah. Started working there for free. Kind of snowballed from there, getting additional responsibilities and sort of the longer I work there. But I think you've just got to put content out there because the phrase is, cream always rises, and cream does always rise. If you're putting out good content, you will get noticed, you will get picked up. And what I have noticed about wrestling media, there are so many good people who are willing to help out, whether it's retweeting your work or giving you opportunities. There are so many good people who are willing to help. So I do think that, it's just about putting good content out there and trying to network and sort of engage with people to get your content out there.
Yes, on Instagram, Wrestling in the Years asks, do you have any plans to work more directly with a singular wrestling promotion?
You sure? If the opportunity came about and like WWE was like, hey, let's work close together, of course. If AEW was, of course, I'd love to. But for right now, I'm very much enjoying the work I'm doing with Give Me Sport, where I've kind of got the opportunity to work closely with different promotions, but we're not as closely as the question sort of inferred. But yeah, I've had the opportunity to work closely with WWE, with AEW, and hopefully that will only expand once we sort of COVID restrictions lift and we get to go to shows. That'll hopefully be a good thing. But for right now, I'm kind of very much enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. But yeah, I mean, if WWE said, hey, we need the new backstage interview, do you want to try it out? Yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I'd never say no to any sort of opportunity. Never say no.
Yeah, well put there. So if you had to work with one, though, I'm going to limit you one.
It's got to be it's got to be WWE for me, because it's just WWE. Like they're just the global juggernaut. Like they are WWE. They are the wrestling company that I used to work with. It's some great wrestling content, but they're 2 years old. Like I remember their first show. I remember a world before AEW. I don't remember a world before WWE, because WWE long sort of precedes my existence. So for me, it would be WWE, but I'd work anywhere. I'd work for Impact, Rev Pro, Ring of Honor, Progress, anywhere that'll have me, I'll work.
Yeah. So, spoken about the British wrestling scene, which promotions do you think at the minute that are currently thriving, do you think could potentially break the glass ceiling into a higher sort of level?
In AEW is the obvious answer. Could they overtake WWE as a wrestling company?
Yes.
I don't think so.
No.
Because of just how big WWE is. WWE is just WWE. They've got years of sort of not experience, but years of experience as well. But I guess just years of history, and years of history as a business. Like from a wrestling stance, yes, it's very easy. WWE, AEW is better, but like from a business side, like WWE is thriving. I think Impact's got, but it's difficult because for now it's a 2-horse race, but like one of the horses is very much far ahead. So seeing like a third horse enter that race for me would be a bit. I can't see it, but with this working relationship with people, I could see Impact. They're doing great work at the moment. It'd be a difficult one, but kind of what promotion do I see taking the biggest steps in the next year? Probably AEW, especially if Punk comes in, for sure.
Yeah, it's always unpredictable in the wrestling future. As for superstars in particular, you'd like to see more on the screen in the next few years, who you think might become the top stars?
From WWE, did you say?
Anywhere.
Oh, anywhere. Okay, I'll give you a few answers. Pete Dunne for me should be on the main roster already. Absolutely great guy who I've actually been meaning to reach out to arrange something with in terms of an interview, because I think he's going to be a big star in the future. I think he's ready made for somewhere like WWE, like NXT, or even NXT UK with kind of the production they've got. But for me, the answer will always be Walter on the main roster. I think he's so good. And I don't think people realize just how good he actually is. So I'd love for him to get the chance to show that.
Yes, I agree with that. Walter should be higher on the card. I mean, NXT UK is a good product, but it's just not got enough eyes on it. So in that case, I guess going forward, we're seeing wrestling at the minute sort of, we're in an era where the older talents are the ones on top, the wrestlers in their 40s. Which of these talents do you think could be the next Hollywood star? If we're talking like Randy Orton, AJ Styles, Bobby Lashley, that kind of echelon.
Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, 100%, million %.
Yeah, okay.
Roman Reigns in 5 years, I don't think will be full-time with WWE. I think he'll be in Hollywood. He's shown with this new gimmick that he can act. He can cut a good promo. His facial expressions are there. His matches are like movies. For me, Roman Reigns in 5 years won't be with WWE. I mean, I reckon he'll be like a John Cena or that, linked to WWE, but he is doing amazing things. He's had the taste of it with Hobbs and Shaw in a small role, but I do think that Roman Reigns is a matter of time before he's killing it in Hollywood. So Cody as well, we'll show some love for Cody. I think he's maybe not the acting role, but I think in terms of like he's doing with the Go Big show, where he's got sort of external activities, and I think AEW see the advantage of that. Well, I don't think he'll be sort of leave, but I think he'll go for longer periods of time and do acting or reality shows, and he's got one coming up. I think that he's someone that I could see sort of branching out and it being a great.
As we start to wrap things up, I guess we're going to ask about future plans, just to whet the readers' appetites to go over to your page and see what's going off.
Yeah, so if you follow Give Me Sport WWE on YouTube, that's kind of the main thing I'm pushing at the moment. That's where all my interviews go. One will be up next week with Drew McIntyre and following week with Jinder Mahal. Hopefully a few more in the lead up to SummerSlam, and one with AEW, which I've got in the pipeline as well. If you follow me on Twitter at the Louis Dangoor, that's Dangoor, DANGOR. Kind of just post wrestling news on there, discussion pieces, hot takes, often bad takes. So yeah, just kind of social media really is the main thing, because that's where I post everything. So that's Twitter, the Louis Dangoor.
I was going to ask if you want to plug anything, but it seems like we've done that. If there's anything else you want to comment or plug?
No, just thank you very much for having me on. It didn't go downhill. It was a very good interview, so I appreciate you having me on your show.
Considering I ran out of questions halfway through.
It was a very good interview. I know it's nerve-wracking as well. Like I have my first interview, I absolutely crap myself. So you did a fantastic job. Definitely early stage of your career. So good luck to you, and I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine, and we should do it again sometime.
Oh, thank God. So that's my first solo interview done. Please go follow Louis on the allocated places. I've been Griffin from Wrestlebuddy, and this has been Louis Dangoor.